Recording started.
Okay, great. Okay, everybody, thank you again so much for being a part of our Caregiving Advocacy Conference. It's been awesome to spend this time with you. And this is our last workshop for the afternoon. I had mentioned yesterday that my goal is to help as many people as possible create a family emergency plan, and that's how we're going to close out our day. A family emergency plan really comes from this idea that I truly believe, which is every worry needs a plan. If I am worrying, stressing, fretting, I pivot to a plan and feel better. If I stay stuck in the worry, I feel worse. The other part of it is if I stay stuck in the worry, I stay stuck in the past. The day keeps moving and I keep getting farther stuck in the past. So I really believe if we can think through what plan helps our worry, we keep moving forward. I also think it's helpful just to say out loud what our worry is. We will hear from others in our life who will say, "Why are you worrying about that?" And then they'll give you some kind of statistic that sounds like, 90% of what you worry about doesn't come true. Well, in a perfect world, sure, maybe that stat rings true. In our caregiving experience, we've already experienced a worry becoming our reality, which is why I think it's so much more helpful to pay attention to our worries and create a plan rather than minimizing or judging ourselves for worrying. Let's just use the worry as a trigger that we need a plan. And if you guys do this, I'd love for you to share in the chat room. If you already think about a worry needing a plan, if you have a process in place like that, that would be awesome. I'd love to hear about that. Okay, so then we start to think about, okay, so what are plans? Because plans can be this generic term. What do we mean by plans? I wanted to give you some suggestions about what a plan could be. A plan can be answers to our questions. So if there's a doctor's appointment coming up, we're worried about that doctor's appointment, we can actually sit down and write out questions that we want to ask. And maybe we think, you know what? I'm actually going to go into the portal, send these questions to the doctor before the appointment so the doctor is prepared. Let's say there's a doctor's appointment coming up and you just are unsure about what the next steps might be in regards to treatment options or disease progression. Again, that would be a plan you can put in place with questions to ask the doctor. But I also think it's so helpful if we think out what could be answers to what we need. I'm curious, when you think about what you need in your day in order to feel like you have what you need, what do you need? So for me in my day, I really am so committed to my good morning routine. I need that now. I don't dread it. I used to dread the stretching part because it hurts so much. And just last night, I was like, honestly, it was the first time I had this thought. I am so looking forward to stretching in the morning. Now, you could have thought, huh, why didn't she just stretch in the evening if she was looking forward to stretching? But it didn't occur to me to go ahead and stretch right then. I decided to delay it till the next morning. Anyway, that's what I need in the day. I need coffee. I need a break. I need sunshine. I need activity. So if I have an idea about what I need, then I can think through what's the plan to make sure that happens. So thinking through what do you need? And then what's the plan to make that happen? We can also think about plans as actions to take. Maybe it's a phone tree. So you're not calling everyone, you're calling one person who then calls the next person, who then calls the next person. Plans could be what you delegate. And sometimes delegation is delegating to the next day. If you have a to-do list for today, the day just blows up. Rather than chiding yourself for not getting everything done, you can make an intentional choice to just delegate items to another day. When we were really going through some concerns about the future of Social Security, this was just a few months ago. So this is May right now. In February, there were lots of worries about what was happening to Social Security. So I thought, you know what? This would be the time to actually appoint yourself representative payee for your caree if you haven't done that already, and if your caree receives Social Security. So I was starting to worry about Social Security, what's going to happen to it. I thought, oh my gosh, if I were caring for my parents, I'd really want to make sure that I had completed the paperwork to be their representative payee, because I don't know what's going to happen. Offices are closing. It seems like they're shutting down the phone support. Am I going to be the one that actually manages this for them? What do I need in order to do that? And I need to be designated a representative payee. So that's an action to take. And then I also think it's helpful to really look at care needs are going to change. So when there's a change, what are the steps we can take? It could be that care needs might change within the next few months. So what you do is you call, for instance, the home health agency or the home care agency and say, we need to start using you more. What does that look like? If you have family members who pitch in, you could have a meeting with them and say, you know what, I think we're going to start to see some declines, which means we have to increase the care that's provided. What does that look like for all of us to increase our availability? The worry is how to keep up with changing care needs. The plan becomes conversations, and those are actions. Having a discussion is an action. The other thing is we can have plans to make sure that we have products that we need on hand. My dad had terrible skin tears on a regular basis, just terrible. Oh my gosh, just terrible. And sometimes they were so bad, we had to go to the emergency room. Like he ripped off the entire top, I don't know how many layers of skin on one arm. And sometimes I could manage it at home if I had the right supplies. And the right supplies were non-stick bandages and paper tape. The first time my dad fell and had a terrible wound where he tore off the top skin, he did this a couple times. The first time it happened, it was at midnight. He passed out. When the emergency team arrived, when the EMTs arrived, they saw this horrific gash. So they took gauze and they wrapped it all up with gauze. We went to the emergency room. The emergency room team had to take the gauze off to see how bad the wound was. And the gauze had stuck to this terrible open wound. And watching them remove the gauze, I never want to see that again. I had to see it again a couple other times, but after that, I was like, I am always telling the EMTs to use nonstick bandages. I'm always keeping nonstick bandages in stock. We are never going through that again. So I was like almost obsessed about nonstick bandages and paper tape and antibiotic cream. I always wanted to make sure that we had enough supplies. But then I had supplies for myself. So I talked about how my stress in my back would just feel terrible. And I had this cream that I used that just felt like, oh, the hands of the angels were rubbing this cream on my back. Oh, so I always made sure I had that cream in stock. It was always in my cupboard. It's there right now, ready if I need it. We can think about products to keep on hand for our caree, for ourselves, for people who help us. I think that's always nice too. If you have people who come in to help, what can you make sure is in stock for them? Like understanding what's their favorite soda or pop, for instance, or lemonade or iced tea or coffee. What's a favorite snack they like to have? Just keeping those little simple supplies of their own snacks they like. Oh, isn't that nice? Oh, gosh, that'd be awesome. Okay, then I wanted to give you some other suggestions about what a plan could be. We do free family emergency planning sessions. Oh, cinnamon coffee. Thank you, Beth. Cinnamon coffee. I've been drinking French vanilla coffee, and now I can't imagine a day without French vanilla coffee. So we do this family emergency planning session every fourth Friday at noon Eastern time, and it's free because we are committed to helping everyone create their own plan. And a couple months ago, one of our certified caregiving consultants, Jennifer Ritchie, joined us. And she really zeroed in on the word maps. And she said, you know what? I don't do drop off or pickup for my son. My spouse does, but there's a very particular way about how parents have to do that. She said, I need to ask for the map. I thought that was so helpful to think about. When I was thinking about maps, I was thinking about it as it relates to a hospital system. The first time you go to a hospital, you think, what in the world? Like, how does anybody find the cafeteria? How does anyone find a patient room? And if there's a map that you can just keep handy, you can share it with another family member who's coming so you don't have to give these long directions like, okay, park on level 4, walk through the parking lot to get to the escalator, take the elevator to the 6th floor, then take the walkway, blah, blah, blah. If you just have it available, you can say, Mom's in the hospital, here's the map to the hospital so you can come. I also think we can use our own wisdom as a plan. Like every worry needs a plan. You might have your own life guidance that you default to, which becomes your plan. I had talked about my sister who was this agitator in the family and how my default plan anytime she reached out to me was to not reach immediately out to her, but to reach out to others in the family before I reached out to her. And that really worked out great. It wasn't just me being stuck in this relationship with the agitator. I involved others. They had to be in it with me. It wasn't going to just be me. And then you can think about who are the experts that help you. And it could be a certified caregiving consultant, but honest to goodness, it could be a podcaster you listen to that you think, I always feel better after listening to this podcaster because I get such good insight into what I want my life to be right now. So plans can be anything that work for you. Let's think this through. I was not feeling well over Thanksgiving. And I had been working, so I hadn't been to the grocery store. So I actually worked it out. And a friend actually dropped off a Thanksgiving for me, and she gave me so much food that it kept me going. But after I started feeling better, I thought, I think about this all the time, but really should put a plan in place. If I'm not feeling well, that there are groceries that can help me feel better. So I thought, well, what's my plan for this? So I thought, well, I'll start using technology now when I feel well, start using Instacart. I don't have to use it all the time, but use it enough so that when I'm not feeling well, I know how to use it. Because the worst time to try to use technology for the first time is when you don't feel well. And then what I'll do is create shopping lists that are ready to go based on what my illness is. I'm going to buy different things for the stomach flu than I will for instance, a bad cold. So if I have different lists of what I need, I don't have to think about it when I'm not feeling well. I just order it and it's delivered. When I was caring for my parents, my mom had been hospitalized and then needed short-term rehab. And my dad, who also had been hospitalized and returned home, was struggling and he was having a terrible time He was not feeling well. He was recovering from major surgery. He was recovering from surgery to remove cancer on the top of his head. Oh my gosh, he was just a mess physically, and then emotionally, he was a mess because he was so worried about my mom. So when my mom needed short-term rehab, when she was going to be discharged from the hospital, I looked for a facility intentionally that offered short-term rehab or short-term respite stay for my dad. Because I knew my dad was going to need some more help. And I knew he wanted to be closer to my mom. So if we moved my mom into a facility where she could receive rehab while my dad received respite, it would be easier for him to visit her, and it just would make everything a little less stressful. So I found a facility, and that's what we did. We transferred my mom to the rehab section, and my dad moved into assisted living just on a temporary basis, and it worked out as well as it could work out. And I just think if I hadn't thought of that, it would have just been a nightmare. Just trying to get my dad feeling well enough to make visits so that he had the stamina for the visits, it just would have been too hard. But this way, it was easy for him to visit her and they could have meals together. It just made everything that much better during a really difficult time. Okay, so then the other worry I started having was, well, I live alone. What if I have a medical emergency? So what I finally did was bought a lockbox that I keep on a railing outside of my apartment, and it has an extra key to my apartment. My sister and my brother and a neighbor know the combination. So if anything happens and someone needs to access my apartment, it's not beating down the door, right? We don't want people to like beat down the door to get into our home or apartment. There's an extra key that's easy to access that people can get to, and they just have to unlock the door and come in. Then, when the situation with Gene Hackman happened, I was reading about what happened in the New York Times, and I was reading the comments section, and in the comments section, someone said, I use an app called Snug for daily check-ins. And I thought, well, I want to look at this Snug. So it was so easy to use. I downloaded it. I started to use it. I used the free version. You can upgrade for additional support. I'm good with the free. And now when I do that good morning ritual, I always indicate that I've checked in with Snug. And when I first started using the app, they ask you for emergency contacts that they can reach out to in case you don't check in. I thought, well, I have to ask my brother and sister, like they're my emergency contacts, but I thought they're going to think this is just stupid. But I thought, well, I have to ask. So I called them up, told them what I wanted to do, asked them if I could include them on the app, and they both said, of course, what a great idea. It was kind of shocking, to be honest with you. So they're my emergency contacts. They're all in, all in, all in. I don't know if they would say it's a relief, but it's a relief for me. So I have so enjoyed Snug that I actually talk about it on social media. And I posted about it on LinkedIn maybe about 3 weeks ago. And I posted about it when I was sharing about this good morning ritual that I've actually created. And one of the co-founders reached out to me, and then the co-founder heard about our conference and said, would it be helpful for us to talk about Snug at your conference? And I thought, yes. So Alyssa is here from Snug, and she's going to give us an overview of the product. So if it's right for you, you know how to use it. If it's right for clients, you have an idea about how to use it. So Alyssa's here, and thanks for being here. So tell us more about Snug.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that I got to see kind of the intro there around planning too, because my brain works in a really similar way. And I love those tips that you gave there. Okay, let's see. I'll share my screen and you can see it now. See my slides? Cool. Okay. Um, so Yep, my name is Alyssa. I'm one of the co-founders of Snug. I have been working on it now for, I think, about 10 years with our other co-founder, Preet, who reached out on Denise's post. Um, Safety is near and dear to my heart. I have worked in safety tech for a long time. Preet and I worked on an app called Blue Light that was helping improve 911 technology back before Rapid SOS was integrated into the iPhone. So we worked in that space. And then I led safety, the community safety team at Lyft, the rideshare company. So we designed all of the emergency interventions that can happen in a Lyft ride. Um, Recently, I have been spending all of my time on Snug, which I love. And in my personal life, I also work really closely with our county search and rescue. So I'm very tied in with our sheriff's office and unfortunately with our coroners, and have really, had a firsthand view of how common it can be for someone to have an emergency that goes undetected. Um, that's part of the reason that we designed Snug, that we built Snug, and it is just a thread that has continued through my life now for a lot of years, and I'm very honored to be here to be presenting to you all. So let's see here. Snug, like I said, it's a free daily check-in partner. We're mostly targeted on seniors, but we've found that anyone living alone or anyone who acts as a caregiver for someone who can't take care of themselves, it is finding value in using this daily check-in. Um, it's really simple. It's not something that the user needs to proactively seek help with. It is built to be an underlying safety net that doesn't need any engagement from you to work. So if you think about calling 911 or even, using an Apple Watch, which is a great technology, you can say Siri, call 911. Or a fall detection, for example, those all need some type of trigger to send an informational signal out. Snug is the opposite way. We only engage if we don't hear from you. So when things are working really well for Snug, or with Snug, when somebody's healthy and going about their life, every day they get a notification that says something like, "Don't forget to check in with Snug soon." If you don't respond, we're going to send it a bunch more times so that you don't forget. Then you open up the app. It's really simple. You just see this big green button. It'll circle back. You hit that green button and it's going to reset the timer for another 24 hours. We do have options for folks who want a shorter check in window. So if they want to be um, checking in up to 3 times a day, they can do it morning, noon, and night. But we just reset that timer until we hear from them again. If we don't hear from them, then we start to message their emergency contacts in a couple different ways. I'll go into that in a minute. Um, we recently celebrated 20 million check-ins, which is a big milestone for us. So that's 20 million days of peace of mind for our customers. We shared this pretty widely, and we just had a wonderful response. I included a couple of the comments that we got on Facebook here. This top one is a real situation where a person changed their medication, and they were just sitting in their chair and passed out for about 6 hours. And then she missed her snug check in, and it notified her granddaughter and her daughter. They called someone to come check on her, and she was able to go to the ER and get help from that, which is just, you know, in that case, fall detection didn't go off. She wasn't awake to be able to call out for help. Um, who knows how long she would have been unconscious there. We're really happy to be able to provide that extra layer of backup so that she could get help. Um, More in the peace of mind category, we've got Karen, who says her 100 and a half-year-old mom has been using the app for 3 or 4 years, and she's still on her own, partially because of the peace of mind that they get from using the app, because they know that that layer is going to kick in if they don't hear from her. And then from Mindy, single mom of a special needs child, even just single mom of little kids who couldn't call 911 if something happened. It's a great backup to give her the peace of mind that her loved one will be taken care of and won't be left alone. Um, we also have a lot of customers who use Snug because of their pets. They are less worried about their personal safety, though I know we're all that's deep inside of all of us. But they really, really don't like the idea of their pet being home alone and not cared for. So they're using Snug to make sure that someone knows that they can get help with their pets and their children can be cared for too. Our principles around Snug are really around control, simplicity, and reliability. So our customers are always in control. We are treating our users as our primary customer, and we're communicating back and forth with them, making the app something that they are comfortable using. We've gone through that with our setup flow. It is incredibly simple, and we also have support available to help anybody who needs it. So it's not something that's complex that a caregiver needs to set up for their caree. It is something that person who's going to be using it can do on their own, and that's really critical for us. Um, the app, in its simplicity, does only one thing. It is just check-ins. We're not trying to track your location all over. We're not doing fall detection. Other companies are. We may in the future. We're not right now. We're not trying to sell you a bunch of other things. It's just this one thing. We're keeping it really, really simple. It's reliable. It works every day. If there's something that goes wrong, we have support on hand to make a phone call and help figure out what's going on there, just to make sure that folks know that we are there for them. And it is truly shaped by our community. We're always learning from our users. They send us lots of information, lots of notes, and ideas of things to do. So we're always taking feedback from people to improve the product. Okay, so what happens if somebody misses a check-in, right? If everything's going well, you're checking in every day, it means you're good to go. What happens on that day that a check-in gets missed? So we have two different plans that work a little bit differently. Before the check-in is ever missed, Snug is going to send multiple reminders. We do this via push notification and SMS message so that if one channel is not coming through, hopefully we get you on the other one to remind you to check in ahead of that time. If that time comes and goes and you still haven't checked in, then depending on what plan you are, Snug handles them a little bit differently. On our free plan, which is most of our users, Snug will send a text message to the emergency contacts saying, hey, Annie didn't respond today. Here's their last known location. Can you please check in? It's the emergency contact's responsibility to follow up on that message. But for most people who have a support system of some level, even if they're across the country, this works really great. They just need something to go outbound and tell the sister or the neighbor, hey, that person needs a check in today. Then they make a phone call or go visit. A lot of times it's a false alarm, somebody overslept. But we've actually found that occasionally missing a check in reinforces that the product works, gives people that extra peace of mind, and brings people together. It says, hey, I was really worried about you when I heard about your missed check-in. And then the Snug user says, oh, I'm sorry about that, but thank you so much for checking on me. It means a lot to me. Um, on our paid plan, which is $19.99 a month or $199 a year, we involve a professional dispatching service. And this is used more for people who either want, a lot more reassurance that someone is going to be tasked with checking on them, or people who don't have as reliable of a support network to, trust that a text message is going to get the message across. So our paid customers, first, our dispatchers will call them on their phone to make sure it's not a false alarm. If they don't answer, then we're going to call each of those emergency contacts in order, to see if somebody will commit to going to check on that person. If we can't get in touch with any of those people, or if they don't have any contacts, then we will contact local emergency services to initiate a wellness check on their behalf. So even if this person has no support system in the world, we can still get help to them when they miss a check in. And then that kind of brings me to, back full circle here, is that missing the check in is just the first step, right? We have to have a comprehensive emergency plan around what to do when an emergency contact gets that notification that a check in is missed. So, Snug works really closely with our customers to encourage them to talk to their emergency contacts about what to do in this situation. And funny, I'm using a map here as well. We think of the plan like the map. It doesn't need to have every detail, but it needs to point emergency contacts in the right direction of where to go. So we want to tell people what they should do first. Are they making a phone call? Are they calling a neighbor? What is going to be their first action? And then who should they coordinate with? If we've got three emergency contacts who are all notified at the same time, should they get together in a group text or something to communicate about who's doing what so that we're not having multiple threads going in the same in different directions? How to access your home. Do you have a smart lock or a hide a key, something like that? This is also something that our dispatch customers can put in their profile. So if a wellness check is initiated on their behalf, we can give that to emergency responders so that they can get in the house without breaking down the door. Um, where to find medical details, key health concerns, that type of information. Um, we don't like to store that, but to put it in a special place where that can be accessed by first responders. Pet care information, important documents. Where do we find all of those things? Just kind of making sure that the missed check in is just the start, and then the final loop is getting all of that information to the people who will be helping. So it's kind of a super high level overview of Snug. Like I said, we try to make it very, very simple to set up and go through. We've got great resources on our website, and I am often on the support box. So if anybody has questions, feel free to reach out to us. We also offer for any type of office or community outreach. We have these postcards that we would love to send to you that you can give to people that have a QR code and information on how to download stuff. Any questions? I would love to hear what you think.
Yeah, Barbara has a question. She's wondering, how do you get around people who are apprehensive and using cell phone apps?
Hmm.
And do you have vacation or short-term turnoff?
Great question. So we we do hear about folks who are apprehensive about using the cell phone app. Right now, you do have to have the app. You have to have a smartphone because it uses a little bit of location. We only store your last known location in case of a missed check-in. But if you don't like using smartphone apps, you don't really have to use it. You don't really have to go in. You can tap on the notification and check in directly from the notification. So you don't have to open it all up. There's not a ton of hoops to jump through. We try to keep it really simple. We are exploring some additional options around phone call or maybe a web based check in that will help people who don't want to use an app at all. But right now it is app based. Um, on the vacation or short-term turnoff, yes, we have the option to pause it for any length of time. So when you go if you're all signed up, you go into the app, you push menu, and then start vacation. You put in the dates that you're interested in, and it will just turn off your check-ins until the date that you've specified you want to turn them back on. Support can also help with that. So sometimes we get people who had to go into the hospital unexpectedly or something, we can turn it off on our end as well.
And you know what, Barbara? It's really interesting. You don't feel like you're using an app. Like I don't ever open up the app because the notification is there for me in the morning. So I've set it that I have to check in by 9 a.m. I usually check in much earlier than that, but I wanted to give myself a little wiggle room. Just literally, you just tap this green check. You'll see that in the postcard image. What's interesting too is I do travel. And I used to give my sister and brother a heads up, I'm going to be out of town. But then I thought, but what happens to me if when I'm out of town? So I actually keep it on regardless of where I'm traveling to because I check in where I am so everyone knows I'm okay. I'm curious, Alyssa, if you know the average age of your user.
Yes. Mostly, I don't know the average age, but a huge majority of our users are women over the age of 65.
Oh, that's okay. So women, yeah. So I'm a little younger than your demographic, just a little bit, just by a little bit. But I thought, why would I wait to use this? If I start using it now, I'm using it. And then if something happens, it's okay because I've been using it.
Yep. Yep. Building the habit, right? You
Yes,
get in the
it's all
habit
about
and
the
then,
habit.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Beth, I do have I can send you this little brochure as a PDF and you can download it.
Do you have
No,
a link
thank
you?
you, Alyssa. No,
Oh,
You
thank
got
you.
it.
it's okay, Beth. Yeah. You know what? There's two Beths. So not you, Beth. The other Beth is looking for a PDF. So you're okay, Beth L. We won't send it to you. But Alyssa, I don't know if you have a
Thank
link to
you,
that.
Denise
Oh,
and
you're welcome.
Alyssa.
You're welcome. If you have a link to the PDF, you can always put that in the chat room too.
Oh, I don't have it on me right now. Could I send it to you that you could email
Yes,
out to folks? Okay,
yes,
I'll do that after.
absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm curious what other questions or feedback do you have or reactions do you have? It was so easy to set up. It was so easy to set up.
Thank you. Yeah, we try to keep it really simple. We only ask for the info that we need to identify you and communicate with your emergency contacts. So we keep it really light.
Yeah. And the other thing that I liked is you gave me a little congratulations, you've checked in 60 days in a row, or I can't remember what the
Oh,
milestone it was. I was like, oh, good for me. Look at me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're good.
Well,
So
all
we're going to
right. Thank
continue
you,
our plan.
everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa, so much for coming. We so appreciate it.
So happy to be
Wish,
here.
yeah, we'll keep in touch and we wish you a good weekend.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Okay, I just love that they are thinking the way that we think. Okay, so let's think about our plan. So we're going to get into a little bit of a family emergency plan, but I wanted to just mention that weather emergencies really are something that we want to be aware of. And I had mentioned yesterday that something that we want to keep in mind for all of us is flooding, thinking through what's the plan in case there's a flood, and then being aware for what weather event might happen given where you live. And it's also important to really be aware that with our temperatures are so extreme now, you want to really think through what to do if it's a really hot day or if it's a really cold day. Okay, I want to make sure that everybody. Yeah, Pat, I agree with you about being single. This is a great idea. Yeah, I'm single and live alone. I agree with you. It's just nice to be able to say, I'm taking care of myself. I'm being an advocate for my own well-being by doing this. I was so happy that they had reached out to me when I posted on LinkedIn that they'd be interested in joining us. I thought, wow, that's okay. So we have a plan that you can use. It's a free plan. And we actually have a section on Caring Our Way devoted to family emergency planning. You can join us anytime for our free monthly meeting. So Beth has been posting in the chat room that she's really been thinking through what to do if something happens to her. She's joined our family emergency planning meetings in the past. What I have found is it is a process. And the more you start moving into planning in case of a family emergency, the more you realize you want to plan in case of an emergency. That's why we do this every month at no charge. We encourage you to join us as often as you need to create the plan. And we really think through how often to update it Maybe it's updating it after the first of every year. So it's current based on what the situation is, current based on who lives where, who's available, what's changed. For the good, maybe there's more resources available, and what's harder because maybe there's less resources available. So the Family Emergency Plan is a PDF, and again, you can download it by going to our Family Emergency Planning section and Caring Our Way. There's a couple other resources that are part of that as well. You can work with a CCC if you'd like as well. When we think about a plan, we've broken it down into information, what's the emergency, what's the worry, what's the plan, and how are you going to communicate this? One of the things Alyssa had talked about was communication in the family emergency plan. A plan is great. We have to tell people that we have a plan in place. That's the next step. And sometimes we forget that we put a plan in place and then we think, oh, I'm the only one that knows about this. Others need to know about it. We use this PDF with these wheels. In our special section, you'll also see that I have created folders that you can upload into a Google folder that you create that you then can share. So there, for instance, is a folder called Information. And then there are 8 subfolders, one for each of the words. All you have to do is download these folders I've created for you, upload them into your Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever you use, and then you can share what you've created. You could do this over a period of time because it does take time. So you could start with, for instance, the information folder and then work through uploading documents into each of the individual folders, uploading copies of advanced directives, uploading passwords, insurance, important contacts. Okay, so when you look at this information plan, what's the information that you have that you now realize you want others to have access to? Oh, Barbara, yes, you can vote on all of the above because I'm going to vote with you. I try and I always feel like, darn it, I thought I was ahead of the game. Now I'm just realizing, I'm a little behind. Yes, all of the above. Information is really a big category. That's why I wanted to be a little more specific. It's also important to note that these are 8 categories, but these are not all the categories that we might include in a family emergency plan with information. That there could be other categories of information that we think are important. And I'm curious if you look, when you look at this wheel and you see the 8 categories, what's a category that you think, oh, you know what, that's missing because this is what's relevant for me? Medications. Yep. Thank you, Ken. Absolutely. It could be part of medical and it could be completely on its own. It could be its own folder, medications. One of the reasons that I like using a shared Google Drive is because you could upload these folders, create a 9th folder that says medications, create a spreadsheet or Google Doc, and then you can update it on a regular basis. And there's a record of what you've updated. You actually have the versions, which I think is really helpful. Yeah, medications is a good one. And because you might be caring for more than one, it could be that within each subfolder, you have a folder for each of your caree. And this isn't just keeping track of our carees information, it's also our information. So we keep information for our caree and for ourselves. So Beth is sharing in the chat room that they have her husband's medication list online in a read-only Google Doc because it's so long that we just give new specialists the link. Brilliant. Easy for you to keep up to date. Easy for others to access. You could include information about, for instance, your home. So I loved that Alyssa talked about making sure people have access to your house. So I figured that out. But maybe there is another category, another folder for your home. And it could be, you know what, you could even put warranties in there. You could have who's the handyman. You could write in, you know, include who does the snow shoveling. That would be helpful too. Where water main shutoff is, Barbara, that is brilliant. That is brilliant. That is brilliant. That is brilliant. And anything else like that, where to find, what could be essential to find if there's an emergency. For instance, I rent, so it would be my landlord's contact information. And then we can start to be, oh, breaker box. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Pam. You guys are so smart. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had talked about my brother who died in 2021, and his wife died in July of 2024. After my brother died, my sister-in-law moved into a condo she bought. The condo management company asked her to complete a form that would indicate who she gave permission to enter her condo. Unfortunately, my sister-in-law was a terrible hoarder, tons of shame. She was very ashamed of the hoarding. And so she was a very private person. So she indicated she didn't want to give anyone access to her condo, no access. After she died, her sister couldn't get into the condo because the condo management company said, we have to follow this. You have to do something legally. She had to get like a temporary, you know what, it's the end of the day, so I can't really remember, but she needed to have some legal document related to an estate that would give her access. Yes, temporary executor. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Pam. It was very distressing. So when my sister-in-law was dying, she gave her last wishes to my sister and I. She told us where her laptop was and what the password to the laptop was. She told us the password to her phone. The phone was with her in the emergency room in the hospital, so that wasn't difficult to access. But her sister could not get into the condo to access the laptop, which meant she could not access any of the financial documents that my sister-in-law had. So when we think about who has access, we want to give access to someone so they can get in. We just don't know. Okay, so then we can think through what's a family emergency. And I wanted to give you some ideas of what it could be, because I think typically we go to it's weather related. It definitely is weather related for lots of different reasons. It could be weather related. Can the provider get to our home? Like a home health aide to provide care. Could be weather related, as can we access our caree if there's a blizzard? Can we get to their home? Okay, so when you look at this wheel, what's the word that jumps out at you that you think, oh my, I need a plan for that. I didn't think of that in terms of an emergency. Changes. Yeah. Pam, what comes to mind when you think about changes as an emergency? Oh, hard to plan when you don't know what to plan for, right? Yeah. So we can think about what could change, and it could be a caree's condition could change. Availability of a service could change. So availability of resources can change. You know, seasons change too. Our own ability can change as well. Yeah, that's right, Pam. And the seasons change. So what do we do in summer versus what do we do in winter? And then how do we accommodate those changes? And holiday seasons create changes for us too. And family systems can have changes. For instance, maybe there are some young adults living in the home while they adjust after graduating from college and look for their first job. And so they've been available to help, but we know that's temporary. They're going to move out once they get their first job. And so we think that's a change that's coming. How do we plan for that? Okay, and Maxine is sharing who the contact person is. Caregiver is usually consistent. Who we interact with often changes. Yes, right. Yep. And Ken is sharing, we always need to be prepared for delays and changes with his young men on the spectrum. Yeah, always need to be prepared for delays and changes. Yeah. Yeah. And delays can also relate to us. If we work outside the home and we have a delay getting home, but everybody's waiting for us to get home, we can think about what's the plan if I'm delayed? Because if I'm delayed, I don't want everybody to wait for me to make dinner. I want them to start making dinner. But if I'm delayed and the home health aide can't be delayed, what's the plan in that case? I'm curious what you think about burnout as a need for a plan. There were a couple times I was really aware that I was burnt out, and that gave me it, my awareness of it meant I knew I needed to take a break, and so I did that. Right. Burnout definitely impacts our ability to serve. Thank you for that, Pam. Yes, absolutely. We do what we can, right, to prevent burnout. We are all about whatever we can do so that we stay in a good place, and yet caregiving is going to burn us out. And Ken is writing, yeah, definitely need it with respite as one solution, right? So if we're burnt out, which means we need to step out, who steps in? What's the plan? I think if we don't think about our burnout, it can be not just an emergency, but it can be a crisis. And we don't want to create a crisis because we're burnt out. And a crisis, if we're burnt out, means that we've had a significant change in our own well-being, for instance, that might lead to an illness or, heaven forbid, hospitalization. And deadlines can relate to our work. It can relate to paperwork that's due in order for programs to continue. There could be lots of different deadlines we're working with and lots of reasons for a deadline. All right, so then we move into the communicating wheel. So we've thought through what needs a plan. We've mapped out the beginning of a plan, and we can start communicating that we have a plan to use in case, for instance, we're delayed. And now you want to think about, well, who do I want to communicate that with? So it sounds simple. I'm going to communicate that with other members of my family, but perhaps I also want to communicate it with the home health aide and the home care agency. And maybe I don't want to just communicate the plan with them, but maybe I want to ask them for insights about what to do if I get stuck in traffic, if I'm delayed returning from work, delayed because I got stuck at work. What's available for me so that care stays with my caree until I arrive. It's important for us to remember we don't have to be the only one that comes up with the solutions. We can bring in others who have ideas and who can help. I wanted to give you options about how to communicate your plans because sometimes you feel like, oh, do I have to make the phone call? You do not. You do not. If it feels better for one particular relationship to just send texts, go for it. We had one member of our community several years ago who was caring for her mom when her husband was diagnosed with dementia. And she lived in a very supportive neighborhood where everybody knew each other. And so she wanted others in the neighborhood to know about her husband's changes because she knew they would start to notice and then wonder. So she wrote a letter. It was a handwritten letter for each neighbor. She explained the diagnosis. She explained what changes they might see in her husband. She gave them strategies to use if anything seemed a little off, what to say, how to respond. And then she made a request. If you are going to the grocery store, please reach out. I might need a few things, and I'd love it if you could pick them up for me. And then she put each letter into the mailbox of her neighbors, and the response was overwhelmingly supportive. She wasn't in a position where she felt like she could make phone calls. A lot of this, when the diagnosis is new and we're adjusting to it, is raw for us. And we can feel close to tears and we think, I don't want to talk to anybody about this. I'm afraid I'm going to cry and I'm going to be embarrassed if I cry. And I just don't want to put myself through it. It's okay to do the the best thing, which is actually the better thing, which could be to send the email, to write the letter. I put apps as a way to communicate because I had another member of my community who was caring for her husband. And when she needed help, like with raking leaves or mowing the lawn, she would post on Facebook and she would say, I just need some help on Saturday afternoon. If anybody can help rake the leaves, I'd love for you to come anytime between 1 and 3. And her requests on Facebook were the easiest way for her to make the requests. And it was the easiest way for people to say, I'll be there. And then if someone couldn't be there, they just would say, good for you for asking, hope to help the next time, or something like that. It was just an easy way for her to ask and receive. And Barbara is sharing the story that I told about the letter writer. Barbara is sharing, people want to know how to help. She told them exactly how to help. And I also think people want to feel comfortable engaging in a conversation when someone changes how they communicate. So they would notice that her husband was different, and that makes us uncomfortable, and we feel ill-equipped to manage that conversation. And she gave them really clear strategies that were easy to implement. They weren't surprised. And then it continued the relationship between the neighbors and her husband, which was another huge benefit. She wanted the neighbors to continue the relationship with her husband. So she just empowered the neighbors on how to stay in relationship with her husband. A friend of my parents did something similar. My mom had a good friend that she had known since grammar school who lived in our community. And after she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, her husband put a letter in my parents' mailbox, and he printed out some information from the Alzheimer's Association about how to interact with someone with Alzheimer's and said, I don't want Lois to hear me talk about this on the phone, which is why I'm sending this and putting this in a letter. She was diagnosed, blah, blah. You probably noticed some changes. Here's some ideas about how to manage the changes. And it was really helpful. And what happened then was the community was able to keep Lois engaged in community activities. So for instance, Lois was a member of the church guild. Church members understood how to interact with Lois. So Lois was able to still come to the meetings and feel good about being in the meetings. And everyone felt good that Lois continued with the meetings. And then her husband would start joining some of the organizations that Lois was a member of. And there was one organization that was a women's organization. But you know what? Everybody was grateful to see. This is also an interesting story. Dick join Lois so that Lois could enjoy the luncheon or the meeting. Dick was a devoted husband and family caregiver to Lois. And after Lois died, Dick started traveling. And he had always wanted to go to Mexico, and he might have been there a few times to help this particular town. He would bring donations and do works of community service while he was there. So he'd go to Mexico a couple times during the year, stay there for a while. And at one point, when he came back, he told everyone, now at the time he probably was 82 or 83, that he now wanted to be called Ricardo. And you know what? Everybody just started calling him Ricardo. No one said, what? Why do you want to change your name? Why are we calling you Ricardo? Everybody was like, okay. And honest to goodness, everybody knows he's Ricardo. And after my mom died, Ricardo was really helpful with my dad. He would pick my dad up and they'd go out for lunch. They'd go to, oh my gosh, they went downtown to see the Cardinal and the Cardinal's house. Oh, yeah, Ricardo was a huge support for my dad. Just think it's interesting when we think about life after caregiving. You know what? You can change your name. You can do anything you want. So I take great inspiration from Ricardo for the letter he wrote after Lois's diagnosis, how involved he was in keeping her engaged, and then how he became who he wanted to be after caregiving ended. Okay. Ricardo dated a lot too. And whenever he would pick up my dad, there would always be a girlfriend there as well. My dad would give me the updates about who the girlfriend was. Oh my gosh, what fun. Okay. So the next wheel is our worry wheel. And it's just helping us get specific about what we worry about. Because when we have a specific worry, we can create a specific plan. Just curious if there's a word on this wheel that stands out to you. Yeah, money. I would say money always stands out. Yeah, I agree with you. 7, money. Yep. Future. Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Future. You know, and money and future tie in together. And honestly, when you start to look at the words, you can see that they can all flow right into each other, right? Do I have enough money today? Well, do I have enough money for tomorrow? Do I have enough time to get enough money? I feel really stressed out and ashamed about my worry about money. What am I losing in terms of my financial stability? How will I continue to care? What's enough? Consistent care support. Yeah, consistent care support. Thank you for that, Ken. Yeah, so Leanne is sharing future. As an only child, if I were to pass before my mother, who would care for her? Yeah. We have a chat a couple times during the month for children. Only children in a caregiving situation, just as an aside. That chat happens in our community Caring Our Way. As I get older, it's time, right? Pat writes Pat, right? How do we use time in a way that's beneficial? Time. Yeah, time. Who do I spend time with? How do I spend my time? So when we think about what our worries are, then we can put a plan in place. So what do you think about the words on this wheel? You know what I think is interesting? So change has been something that we've thought about as having a negative impact. And in this wheel, you could think about change as having a positive impact. What's a routine you can change for the better? What's a habit you can change for the better? What's a strategy you can change for the better? What's a routine you can change for the better? Okay. So that's our family emergency plan document. And again, you can download your own copy on our website, Caring Our Way. And I just wanted to close with a few last thoughts. And that is, there's a process you can follow as you go through family emergency planning. Naming the worry, developing the plan, communicating the plan, then building it out, right? You're going to start with a draft and then build it out, adding and combining. So you might combine some plans because they might be interrelated. And then you're going to review the plan knowing that it's not static. It requires updating. The other thing to keep in mind is it's helpful to avoid an assumption that something isn't going to happen to us. And we know in caregiving, it did happen to us. I also think it's small steps we want to take. And it's not about waiting. Oh, I'll wait till next summer when I feel better, right? Waiting wastes your time. And as you go through this planning process, consider who can keep you company. What's the music you listen to? Who do you talk out your plans with? What's the environment you create so you feel comfortable creating this plan? Who's an expert that you hire? Who's a friend that you invite to create a plan with? There's nothing like good company. And I always think this as it relates to building support and creating your plan. Do it on your best day, so it works for you on your worst day. So building support for ourselves in our caregiving situation is something we do on our best day. And on our best day, we think, oh, I don't need support. And then on our worst day, we think, where's our support? Build it on your best day so it's available for you on your worst day. And it's the same with your plan. Build it on your best day so it works for you on your worst day. And then we'd love for you to join us, especially in our special section for family emergency planning, because as you create your plans, I'd love for you to share what your plan looks like. You can make it generic so we don't have any insights into who you are, but it just is really helpful. When you create a plan, you inspire us to really make a good plan. Okay, what questions might you have before we close for the day? Okay, I think we're good. I think we did it. So what I'm going to do is share a link to our evaluation.